All right, so today's lesson is on topic 3, and topic 3 is called environmental choices. Last class we had looked at the human impacts on environments and human impacts on ecosystems. So today we're going to focus on environmental choices. All right, so firstly, there is something called the ecological footprint, and this is a calculation that can be made. It's a calculation of the total area of land and water needed to supply all of the materials and energy a human uses, as well as absorb the waste produced. So when this ecological footprint is calculated, it includes resources. For example, it'll include all the resources used to build bikes, buses, cars, as well as the energy used and the pollution that the bike, the bus, or the car creates. And Canadians, we are actually using many more resources and creating much more waste than is sustainable. And what is sustainability? These are, when something is sustainable, it means resources are being renewed at least as quickly as they are being used. Okay, so that's sustainability. The resources of nature are being renewed at least as quickly as they are being used, and that all wastes are able to be completely absorbed. So right now we have a huge issue with plastics because plastics are not being absorbed. So how can we reduce our ecological footprint? So things like being aware of your consumption of natural resources and how much waste you are producing, and also by reducing the amount of energy you use, the number of products you buy, and the amount of garbage you produce. And also with plastics, making sure you're not using as much plastics. You can use more materials that are recyclable and so on. All right, so this diagram is just showing how the ecological footprint, it measures how fast we consume resources and generate waste compared to how fast nature can absorb our waste and generate new resources. All right, so here we're just looking at a couple diagrams. So I'm just going to pause it here. All right, so from our discussion, we just talked about which scene had the bigger ecological footprint. So we all agreed that it was the right hand side that has the bigger ecological footprint. All right, so again, ways to reduce our impact on the environment, reduce, reuse, recycle, reducing. So by reducing the amount of garbage you produce, try to avoid buying individually wrapped items, disposable items, and overpackaged items. Take reusable bags or a backpack to carry your purchases when you go shopping. And a lot of stores now are charging you for bags anyways. They're charging you, I don't know, up to 15 cents for a plastic bag. So take your own. Reuse products rather than just throwing them away. You can buy products that you can use over and over again instead of using disposable ones. So for example, if you're taking a lunch or a snack, use containers that you can use over and over again instead of the plastic sandwich bags. Used clothing, you can donate, right, to consignment stores. You can give it to charity, or you can give it to other family members or your friends or your siblings, and so on. Give them to Goodwill. If you can't reuse materials, try to look for ways to recycle them. There's a lot of facilities that take recycling, paper, cardboard products, your pop cans and bottles and so on. Plastics can be recycled as well. You can also use your compost bin. So in Calgary right now, we have all our compost bins, all your scraps of food, put them into the compost bin instead of into your garbage can. That way it's not going into the landfills, it's going into compost. Yeah, so many things can be recycled. Newspapers, egg cartons, your jars, your cans. There's so many materials that can be recycled. It just takes time and effort to make sure you're doing that. What else here? An individual can reduce his or her ecological footprint by making wise choices for daily activities. Biking, take the bus instead of driving a car by yourself. So be aware of the natural resources you consume during a typical day. To reduce the amount of energy you use, the number of products you buy, and the amount of garbage you're producing, your ecological footprint will shrink and the impact you have on ecosystems around you will be reduced. All right, so we'll pause here.
This is the story of 3 plastic bottles, empty and discarded. Their journeys are about to diverge, with outcomes that impact nothing less than the fate of the planet. But they weren't always this way. To understand where these bottles end up, we must first explore their origins. The heroes of our story were conceived in this oil refinery. The plastic in their bodies was formed by chemically bonding oil and gas molecules together to make monomers. In turn, these monomers were bonded into long polymer chains to make plastic, in the form of millions of pellets. Those were melted at manufacturing plants and reformed in molds to create the resilient material that makes up the triplets' bodies. Machines filled the bottles with sweet, bubbly liquid, and they were then wrapped, shipped, bought, opened, consumed, and unceremoniously discarded. And now here they lie, poised at the edge of the unknown. Bottle 1, like hundreds of millions of tons of his plastic brethren, ends up in a landfill. This huge dump expands each day as more trash comes in and continues to take up space. As plastics sit there being compressed amongst layers of other junk, rainwater flows through the waste and absorbs the water-soluble compounds it contains, and some of those are highly toxic. Together, they create a harmful stew called leachate, which can move into groundwater, soil, and streams, poisoning ecosystems and harming wildlife. It can take bottle 1 an agonizing 1,000 years to decompose. Bottle 2's journey is stranger, but unfortunately no happier. He floats on a trickle that reaches a stream that flows into a river, and a river that reaches the ocean. After months lost at sea, he's slowly drawn into a massive vortex where trash accumulates, a place known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Here, the ocean's currents have trapped millions of pieces of plastic debris. This is one of 5 plastic-filled gyres in the world's seas, places where the pollutants turn the water into a cloudy plastic soup. Some animals, like seabirds, get entangled in the mess. They and others mistake the brightly colored plastic bits for food. Plastic makes them feel full when they're not, so they starve to death and pass the toxins from the plastic up the food chain. For example, it's eaten by lanternfish. The lanternfish are eaten by squid. The squid are eaten by tuna. And the tuna are eaten by us. And most plastics don't biodegrade, which means they're destined to break down into smaller and smaller pieces called microplastics, which might rotate in the sea eternally. But Bottle 3 is spared the cruel purgatories of his brothers. A truck brings him to a plant where he and his companions are squeezed flat and compressed into a block. Okay, this sounds pretty bad too, but hang in there. It gets better. The blocks are shredded into tiny pieces, which are washed and melted so they become the raw materials that can be used again. As if by magic, Bottle 3 is now ready to be reborn as something completely new. For this bit of plastic with such humble origins, suddenly, the sky is the limit.
As the intelligent biped he is, man has been able, over the millennia, to use the planet's resources to become the refined being of today. Predators having disappeared, he has happily multiplied. We are now 7 billion human beings, and there will be 2 billion more of us in 40 years' time. Ever increasing in number, more and more of us live in cities. Cities that are becoming bigger and bigger. To live, to travel, to work. And to get as much comfort as we can every day. Any time of day and night. But it comes with a price. We consume more and more goods and services. We produce waste. Generate pollution. We consume natural resources and the available fresh water. We deteriorate the ecosystems and reduce biodiversity. We put more and more pressure on our planet. That's our environmental footprint. To control and reduce our footprint, can we really go back? That's not easy. Then let's move forwards. How can we make everyone comfortable without destroying our environment? Let's have a closer look. Products and services can be broken down into several phases. The life cycle steps: extraction and production of raw materials, transport and transformation, packaging and distribution, consumption or use, and end-of-life management. And each step of the life cycle interacts with the environment, resources, water, climate, and ecosystems. This means that each product or service we consume has an environmental footprint. To reduce this footprint, we need to act in these 4 areas. And to act, we need to have quantitative data to understand better. The carbon footprint takes into account the greenhouse gas emissions. It assesses the contribution of our activities on climate change. The water footprint evaluates the impacts on the availability of fresh water resources. It takes into account the volume, the quality, and the water stress. The resources footprint takes into account the reserves of raw materials, fossil energy and mineral resources, but also wood or agricultural land. It assesses the impacts on the availability of resources. The ecosystems footprint evaluates the deterioration of ecosystems and biodiversity. It takes into account pollution released into the environment and the change in land use. Assessing the environmental footprint helps make good decisions. To reduce the environmental footprint, several scenarios must be evaluated. We can reduce our environmental footprint by rethinking the management of territories. And we can, for instance, improve the energy performance of buildings to reduce the consumption in cities. And use renewable energy to become less dependent on fossil resources and emit less greenhouse gas. Treating water and managing water more efficiently means reducing our pressure on water resources and also protecting ecosystems or restoring biodiversity. To ease our daily city life, different means of shared transportation offer many solutions. Solutions adapted to the local reality and everybody's needs. Better sorting our waste means we need fewer raw materials thanks to recycling. And energy recovery from waste reduces our need for fossil fuel. The city of tomorrow will function according to a logical system, maximally integrating these activities. In the future, they will become increasingly interdependent. And already the lines between them have blurred. Here, waste becomes energy. There, wastewater is turned into bioplastics or heat. Somewhere else, electricity becomes green. Managing our environmental footprint in a world under pressure enables us to live in a territory that is more resilient, healthier, more attractive, and more competitive. Let's act together to reduce our environmental footprint.
All right, so just to finish off our lesson today, for homework today, you're just going to be finishing up the assignment number 1.